Hey guys, deciding to do another video today. I'm going to be talking about Clive Barker's Abarat series. Excuse me. So the Abarat series are a trilogy of books published by Clive Barker. There are supposed to be, I think, 4. So far, 3 have been published. And one of the immediately striking things about them is Clive's fantastic illustration work throughout them. Just you can see here, these strange, fantastic, colorful paintings that he did to complement this world that he thinks of. And these hardcover editions are full of them, sprinkled out throughout the text, and really show his imagination at work. And not only that, the story itself is very imaginative and takes a lot of interesting twists and turns, and there's a lot of plot going on, a lot of locations, a lot of strange magical twists and turns and directions in the narrative itself. But what is the plot, you're probably asking me, as I show you some more great illustration work. Clive is one of my favorite artists, as well as one of my favorite writers, and his paintings are actually a big inspiration for me to get into drawing and things, even though I completely suck at it. But his writing has also been very influential to me as well, and I'm actually a fairly good writer. So I can't draw or paint, but I can write and edit, sentences and stories. But anyways, the story is about a girl named Candy Quackenbush, and she lives in a little town in Minnesota called Chicken Town. And it's called that because the big industry there is like a meat packing plant that primarily deals in chicken. Like, they raise chickens, they slaughter them, and process them at this meat plant. And Candy lives in a very kind of subdued household. She has a very abusive, horrible father who's just a complete asshole. Her mother's very demure and very frightened of him. And a few siblings that also kind of equally live in fear. And everything's kind of very pins and needles. Like, everyone walks on eggshells in her household. And there's a lot of other plot threads too that are established. For instance, there's an old hotel room that's supposedly haunted by a ghost by the name of Henry, who shot himself there decades before. And at the beginning of the first book, Candy's doing a book report on the haunted hotel room. Because she finds it interesting, and it's one of the only interesting things in her boring, mundane town. And she notices little tiny traces of his spirit there. And then immediately after that, she starts, while sitting in class, she starts just doodling. She starts just drawing lines and lines and lines in her notebook. And it's like she kind of falls into somewhat of a trance. And she kind of is just off in this daydream kind of world. And her teacher is a complete tool about it and sends her to the principal's office. Well, Candy, still being in this kind of state, decides to just kind of meander out of the school, walk down the street, and out to the edge of town, where there's just like fields, endless fields. The town just kind of suddenly grinds to a halt on the last street, and there's just endless grass for miles. And out there is like an old structure, like an old broken down lighthouse. And it's while she's in the tall grass, she actually meets this very strange character who's on the run from another weird entity. And the two of them have to climb up. And then all of a sudden, Candy finds herself transported into an entirely different universe. And this universe is an ocean populated by an archipelago of islands. And they're all very magical and full of all kinds of weird creatures and characters. And it's this world that Abarat primarily takes place, and at which Clive, his imagination just runs wild. and he uses this broad world as a canvas to paint his very strange dreams on. It's fantastic. Both figuratively in the sense of constructing this epic myth and the story about Candy, and also quite literally in his illustrative work. Again, shown here, and also shown here in the second book. He did an oil paintings. He created like 300 canvases full of paintings to accompany this world. It's fantastic and quite a labor of love. And so anyways, I can't seem to finish a sentence. Let's start again. So after Candy finds herself transferred into the Abarat, and she finds that this world is comprised of 25 islands, all forming an archipelago, and each island is an hour of the day. So there's 24 islands, and then there's another one it's kind of like a time out of time. It's like this mysterious island, where the rules of space and time and reality don't quite conform to those as we know it. And so her story takes her from one island to the next, to the next, to the next, because she finds herself on the run from this kind of horrible, dark lord that rules over the islands. His name is Christopher Carrion. Christopher is one bad mofo. He is known for torture, for murder. He lives on the Midnight Island. He's all about darkness and evil, and he's depicted as being very scary. He's basically like almost like a skeletal figure with his flesh stretched over his face, and he wears like a tank around his head that siphons his nightmares out, and the nightmares swim around like eels in a glass in an aquarium. It's very crazy. And I want to try and find some stuff in here. Oh, there's a book. Forgot that was in there. And he's depicted in one of these books. Oh, here's Candy, by the way. Surrounded by chickens. That's a fantastic picture. That seems to be her kind of life summed up there. And Christopher Carrion is a very evil dude. He's a dictator who's kind of enslaved. Well, not really enslaved, but he's known for being a horrible guy, and he has a position of power. He's basically a prince of the Midnight Isle, and he is known for capturing, kidnapping, torturing, and killing people to get what he wants. And immediately, Candy comes into his radar, and he immediately wants to know who she is, and he wants her captured. So he's sending his cronies out to capture her, and he's looking for her himself, and Candy's basically on the run. And then once she's on the run, she meets a bunch of other great characters, including a creature named Malingo, who has like a leathery, bat-like face, and he's orange. And he looks like a Halloween mask, basically. But he's a very nice guy. And the two of them, like, oh, here he is. This is Christopher Carrion. Oh my god, that's... he just looks intimidating. So, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Sorry. So Christopher Carrion is chasing Candy and Malingo. Candy and Malingo actually eventually get split up at one point, and they're trapped in this guy's house who lives on an island of like meerkat type creatures, and they revolt against him and set her free. And the first book basically ends with Candy out at sea with Malingo, and they're just in a boat floating off into who knows what. And it's a very great, that's a very great ending, because it promises so much more adventure, and you don't know what's going to happen. And that means there's going to be another novel in which, you know, some questions will be answered. Which brings me to the second book. So the second book is called Abarat, Days of Magic, Nights of War. This is where things get really crazy. So there's a picture of Malingo, by the way. That's on there. So Candy is still on the run, and Christopher Carrion is getting more and more like intense about trying to find her, and he's sending his henchmen out to find her. And she can't help but wonder why. What is this fascination he has with me? And we find out, because the narrative jumps around from place to place and character to character, that there's something about her that reminds Carrion of a princess that he once was in love with. Her name was Princess Boa. And he wanted her for himself. He was deeply in love, and he was trying to, I think, get her to marry him. And she wanted to marry someone else, so Christopher had both of them killed at the church, and now he thinks that Candy might in fact be a reincarnation of Princess Boa. And not only that, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like it's shown that there's kind of a goddess who creates everything, and there's a part where early on in this one where she's giving birth to different creatures, and it's shown. There's a part where Candy's able to kind of telepathically communicate to her mother back in Minnesota, like through dreams. There's a part where Christopher Carrion confronts Candy by dropping a house out of nowhere, and they're running through it, and he's slowly just climbing the stairs after her, and she's trying to escape. And there's a lot of hairpin twists and turns where, like, Candy's almost cornered by one of Carrion's henchmen or Carrion himself, and she just narrowly escapes. Not only that, there's a band of rebels that are all banding together and going off in different parts of the isles to try to help Candy and Malingo in their quest. Candy's trying to get back home because she's running and she wants to save her family and everything. And then in the middle of this, spoilers, the ocean of the Abarat actually sweeps into Minnesota and floods Chickentown. And with it brings all these characters. Carrion's back and he's coming across. There's the guy who tried to capture Candy in the first book, his name is Wolfswinkle, is also brought in and later killed. And I don't feel bad for spoiling that because Wolfswinkle's a very minor character and doesn't really accomplish much. And he ends up dead by the end of the second book anyway. There's a lot of characters and like weird creatures and stuff. Also, there's another malignant character named Mater Motley. And Mater Motley is actually Christopher Carrion's grandmother, and she is even more wicked and evil than Christopher himself. And she also has kind of some nefarious plans going on that you find out in this one, the second book. You find out that she's wanting, and I don't feel bad for giving this away, I mean, Knights of War is in the title. Kind of gives you an idea of what's going to happen. She wants to enslave everyone and everything by the dark forces of night. There's like ancient demonic evil spirits that are basically like the old gods of Lovecraft that she's trying to set free this whole time, and she's scheming on her own. So like I said, there's several plot threads all going at once. There's a lot of stuff going on in the series. You find out a little more about Christopher Carrion, and you actually find out that while he is a bad guy, and he even had his, beloved Princess Boa killed, you find out, one, that Candy actually is in fact not a reincarnation, but does have the spirit of Princess Boa in her. And her spirit was actually transferred by some ancient mages on the night Candy was born. They crossed the ocean into Minnesota on a stormy night, and put the spirit of Princess Boa inside Candy's pregnant mother. But you also find out that Christopher is actually in a lot of ways a very sympathetic character, and this ties into a common theme for Clive Barker. In all of his writing, like everything is not so black and white. There's kind of boundaries being crossed and ideas that are kind of smeared a little bit and not really one way or the other. Like things aren't what they seem. And he does like to play with the ideas of pleasure being pain and pain being pleasure, of heaven might being hell and hell might being heaven. Nothing is so black and white. Nothing is so binary. in his writing, and even the monsters, malignant characters, all are quite sympathetic sometimes. A lot of the times they are. They actually have redeeming sympathetic characteristics. And Carrion, while he is a bad guy, does have a very sympathetic and tragic backstory. And the fact that he so desperately, unrequitedly loved this princess that drove him to do what he did is, in itself, a reflection that he does have, a heart. It may be a corrupted one, but he does have one, and he does feel things, and he feels very longing for her. And it's just, oh my god, like, Barker's imagination is just, it's great. He's in this series more than anything else he's done, and that's saying something, because Barker has created some very vast and very minutely detailed world in his previous novels, but it seems like in these books he's having the most fun, he's being the most creative. And someone who is as creative as Clive, it's saying a lot. Like, he's letting his id just run rampant, and I love it. And while still grounding it within a complex narrative, it's still, like, it doesn't go off the rails. Like, there's a lot of things in here, and a lot of characters and creatures and magic and locations and, like, odd little things here and there, but they're all in service to his story. Like, he keeps the story grounded by following these characters, and they each have their own motivations and their own plot lines and their own personalities, while still taking them to locations where he can showcase this grand, fantastic, mythic world. And I love it. And just in this book alone, there's so much that happens. Things get really high stakes here, and while I'm just talking about it, I'm just gonna leaf through and show you some illustrations. Look at that. Those are some scary looking guys right there. And I love this picture. This is actually my favorite painting. It's Candy and Malingo, and they're having their picture taken on like a carnival island. I love that. It's just a sweet little scene. That's great. And another thing I like about this is Clive obviously loves monsters. He likes creatures. There's everything from, the Cenobites from Hellraiser to the Unnamed and Magica to all kinds of other strange things, to the weird human ghost hybrids in Cold Heart Canyon. He likes creatures. And this world is full of creatures. And he lovingly portrays them in this work. It's so great. I love that. Look at this thing. I wouldn't want to tango with that thing. It's great. It's these weird fish creatures and weird skeleton-looking creatures and weird little flying moth things. Also, there's a part in the first book where a spell is summoned where you can make a moth creature out of words. There's so much imagination, so much weirdness. And it's weirdness for weirdness' sake, and I love it. Look at this. Oh my god. In case you can't tell, I really like these books. They're fantastic. And there's characters with weird names like the Crisscross Man and the TikTok Man and Baby Pink Eye. I was also going to mention, this one you also find out who Henry Merkett was, and he actually had ties to the Abarat. Generations past, he was in love with a woman, I think it was a high priestess, and he couldn't be with her, or she chose to leave him, and that's why he killed himself in the hotel room in Chicken Town. And in this one, they're both ghosts, because I think she dies too, and he is struggling with her magic priestesshood. He's why, they actually enter some really weird, there's some interesting thought-provoking discussions they have between them in this book. He's why are you doing magic? That's against the will of God. And she's well, what is magic but an expression of God? And that's pretty interesting, actually, and not unfamiliar. If anyone who's read Barker knows that he does like to ask questions like this, and he does like to play around with ideas. life, the afterlife, heaven, hell, the concept of God, the concept of magic, and what is magic, but you know, the breath and expression of and will of God. And in Magic, another novel he wrote, which I did a video on a long time ago, he talks about in Magica, the universe is separated into like 5 dimensions. There's the world as we know it, and then 4 other really strange ones, and they're all attempting to be reconciled together. They were meant to be together, but they got separated. And it talks about how even like all the world's magicians are all just practitioners of like of the true magic, and the magic being kind of in the essence of everything. And it talks about even the miracles that Jesus performed were acts of magic in this. And I just think that's interesting. It's great. And like I said, at the end of this, the war across the Abarat for good and evil comes to Chicken Town. The town gets flooded. Oh my god, that's striking. Look at that, a palace being burned down. That's very visually stunning. And things get crazy. Things get intense. And the actual war for night and day is started here. And Mater Motley gets her way and unleashes a lot of crazy stuff. Which takes us to the 3rd book. While I'm just kind of going through this one, looking at pictures. The 3rd book is called Absolutely. And on the cover has Mater Motley herself. This one, like everything, is full swing going on. There's, Candy Belingo and the band of good guys are fighting against Mater Motley, Christopher Carrion, and the forces of evil. And it's a very apocalyptic. There's a full-on war going on. There's a lot of magic being thrown around. A lot of weird stuff going on. And again, some more fantastic illustration work. And I'm interested because this whole thing brings everything together that had happened in the first 2. It expounds a lot on what's going on, and also adds a lot of things into the mix. And finally, at the very end of the book, I don't know where it's going to go from here, because the very end of this one, like, everything kind of comes to a stop. Like, the world basically ends. So I'm curious to see if there's supposed to be a 4th book. Because Clive has always said it was a quartet. So there's supposed to be 4 books. And I'm curious to see where the 4th one from here could go. Because you could actually, even if he never wrote or ever publishes a 4th one, the way this one ends actually feels very final. It feels like a finale for the whole series. And it kind of wraps everything up neatly, honestly. So those are just my opinions and thoughts on Abarat and why I love the book series so much. I haven't read them in a while, but I'd like to go back to them again, because it's been a few years, and it's just a fantastic series, and I think about it a lot, actually, just in my day-to-day life. I think about the Abarat books, and they're my favorite thing Clive Barker has written. I think they're his best work. They feel kind of like a culmination of everything he's been trying to accomplish as an artist, both as a writer and as a painter and everything. Like, they feel like the epic story that he's always been trying to tell for the last 30 years through various epic novels of fantasy and horror and everything. And all of his huge amount of illustration work. He's done a lot, tons and tons of art independently from his writing. So this kind of feels like the perfect marriage of everything he's trying to say, and feels like it's the final culmination of everything he's been wanting to express. He finally created a world big enough and imaginative and blank enough to just throw everything at, while still telling an interesting and an ultimately universal story, which I really like. And as usual, he's creating interesting and likable, complex characters, because even the bad guys have their own complexities. So anyways, in summation, I highly recommend reading the Abarat books. So far there's only 3. They've been around for a while. The last one was published quite a while ago. I actually remember when the 3rd one came out. I was quite young. The last one was published in 2011, so it's been a while. And I don't honestly know if Clive will ever finish it. This isn't the first time that he started a series and kind of just stopped. He wrote a previous series that was supposed to be longer, but he only published 2 books. The first one was called The Great and Secret Show, and the second one was called Everville, and they were supposed to be kind of the books of the art, as it was called, but he just ended it. And there's other things that he's done that kind of hints at a larger story, just he never pursued. He strikes me as a very restless guy who's constantly just trying to create stuff as fast as he can, and just on to the next thing. Like, as soon as he finishes something, he strikes me as he's just trying to constantly move to the next project, whatever it may be. So we may not get a 4th book in Abarat, but that's okay, because like the series just as 3 feels perfectly complete. It definitely has a very solid beginning, middle, and end. Like, it could stop perfectly at the end of the 3rd one and be fine. And I would be fine with it. So, anyways, I love them. They're my favorite Clive Barker series. I think they're the best things he's ever done. I love the art. And actually, the illustrative work is actually my favorite artworks he's created. And he's a very talented guy. And, I don't know, I just feel like, he is more imaginative than most writers anyway, but especially telling an epic like this, especially so. So anyways, thanks for watching me ramble on and show you lots and lots of illustrations from the Abarat books. They are great and definitely worth reading. So anyways, I hope you guys check them out. I highly recommend it, and I will see you guys in the next one.